Hello, I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you, and let's begin our creative audio journey together. My parents were tech royalty in their own small way. Dad founded Mitchell Tech when he was just 26, and Mom joined as CFO 2 years later. They built security software for financial institutions, not the kind of business that makes headlines, but the kind that builds generational wealth if you do it right. And they did it right. Growing up, we weren't flashy rich. We lived in a nice suburb outside Boston in a house that was big but not mansion big. My parents drove luxury cars but kept them for years. It's not about what you have, Dad always said, it's about what you build. Ryan and I went to good schools, had nice vacations, never worried about college tuition. Normal upper middle class stuff. Ryan was always the risk taker. 2 years younger than me, he had this restless energy, always chasing the next big thing. In high school, he sold customized sneakers to classmates until the principal shut him down for running an unauthorized business. In college, he dropped out of business classes to start an app that would revolutionize campus food delivery. It lasted 6 months before failing spectacularly, taking $50,000 of our parents' investment with it. Meanwhile, I was the steady one. I studied architecture at Cornell, interned every summer, graduated with honors. I built my career brick by brick, joining a respected firm in Boston. Even with the safety net of family money, I wanted to make my own way. Mom used to joke that I got her financial sense and Dad's creative drive, the best of both worlds. Everything changed 7 years ago. My parents were driving home from their anniversary dinner when a truck driver fell asleep at the wheel. They died instantly, at least that's what the police told us was a mercy. I was 25, Ryan 23, both of us suddenly orphaned adults. The grief was overwhelming, but the practical matters couldn't wait. Dad's company had to be dealt with. Without my parents at the helm, the board voted to sell to a competitor. The sale netted just under $8.5 million after taxes and obligations. That's when we learned about the trust arrangements. Dad's will was specific. 75% of the assets would go to me, 25% to Ryan. The disparity wasn't about favoritism, it was about responsibility. Dad's lawyer showed us a letter explaining his decision. Cassandra has demonstrated financial prudence, he wrote. Ryan needs more time to mature in his approach to money. There was a stipulation that Ryan's portion would be held in trust until he turned 30, with scheduled disbursements, while mine was available immediately. Ryan was furious. "This is bullshit," he said after the reading. "Dad always believed in me. This is your doing." He pointed at me as if I'd written the will myself. I had nothing to do with this. I insisted, equally shocked by the arrangement. This was their decision, not mine. The truth was, I understood my parents' reasoning. Ryan had blown through his trust fund from our grandparents by age 21. Had started 3 businesses that failed within months. Had invested in a friend's restaurant that never opened. Had taken an expensive coding boot camp only to abandon programming entirely after 2 job interviews. I tried to be fair. When Ryan needed $50,000 for rent and expenses after another business failure, I gave it to him as a gift, not a loan. When he wanted to go to Thailand for 3 months to find himself after our parents died, I paid for the trip. I wasn't stingy with my inheritance. But I was careful. I invested most of my $6 million with a conservative portfolio. I bought a comfortable condo in the city but kept working at my firm, eventually making partner. I didn't want to be one of those trust fund kids who never accomplish anything on their own. Ryan took a different approach. He treated his $2 million as rocket fuel for his ambitions, quickly cycling through $500,000 on various schemes. He moved to San Francisco, then Austin, then back to Boston, chasing the next hot startup scene. Each venture was going to be the one until it wasn't. 2 years ago, Ryan met Stephanie at a tech conference. She was beautiful, sharp, and seemed to believe in him completely. With her encouragement, he invested heavily in a cryptocurrency trading platform that promised remarkable returns. 8 months later, the platform collapsed amid fraud allegations. Ryan lost nearly $300,000. I noticed a change in him after that. His calls became less frequent, his social media more curated to present success. When we did talk, he was vague about his work but insisted things were really coming together. I was happy for him, hoping he'd finally found his path. That brings us to 3 months ago, when Ryan and Stephanie moved back to Boston. He invited me to dinner at his surprisingly expensive apartment to catch up. That's when he first mentioned Neurotech, his new startup focusing on neural interfaces for gaming. He talked excitedly about investors and prototypes, using jargon I didn't fully understand. I was supportive but non-committal. The next family dinner was at our Aunt Patricia's house, Dad's older sister, who had always been like a second mother to us after our parents died. That's where Ryan dropped his bombshell demand for $1.5 million, changing everything between us forever. The morning after Ryan's demand, he showed up at my condo unannounced, with a sleek presentation folder and a determined look in his eye. "You didn't even let me explain properly last night," he said, pushing past me into my living room. "I've got the whole pitch deck here." For the next hour, Ryan walked me through his vision for Neurotech. According to his presentation, they were developing neural interface technology that would revolutionize gaming by allowing players to control characters with their thoughts. The glossy slides showed impressive-looking prototypes, graphs with exponential growth projections, and quotes from supposed industry experts I'd never heard of. "We've already secured $500,000 from angel investors," Ryan claimed, flipping to a slide with logos I vaguely recognized. "But we need a significant capital injection to finalize the prototype before Series A funding. That's where you come in." When I asked technical questions about how the technology actually worked, Ryan became vague, talking about proprietary algorithms and cutting-edge neural mapping. When I asked about their burn rate and runway, he gave suspiciously perfect numbers. "Look, Cass," he said, closing the folder. "This is the opportunity of a lifetime. In 3 years, this investment will be worth 10 times what I'm asking for. Don't you want to be part of something revolutionary?" "I need to think about it," I said carefully, "and have my financial advisor look over the business plan." Ryan's expression hardened. "Don't you trust me? After everything we've been through?" "It's not about trust. It's about due diligence. That's what Dad would have done." "Don't bring Dad into this," Ryan snapped, gathering his materials. "He would have believed in me, unlike you." After he left, I called Thomas, my financial advisor since our parents died. He agreed to review Ryan's proposal, but his initial reaction wasn't encouraging. "Neural interface technology is incredibly complex," Thomas said. "The established players have been working on this for decades with limited commercial success. I'd be very skeptical of any startup claiming a breakthrough." 3 days later, Thomas confirmed my suspicions. "There are major red flags here," he said during our meeting. "The financial projections are unrealistic. The technology descriptions are vague and possibly misleading, and I can't verify several of their claimed partnerships." "So you think it's not viable?" I asked. "Best case scenario, your brother is over-optimistic. Worst case," Thomas trailed off. "What?" "Worst case, this could be structured to funnel money out of the business before any product is delivered." That evening, Ryan called me 6 times. I finally picked up on the 7th. "What did your money guy say?" he demanded without preamble. "He has concerns about the business model and technology claims," I said carefully. Ryan exploded. "What does that suit know about cutting-edge tech? His idea of innovation is probably a new Excel template. Has looking out for my financial interests, Ryan. That's his job." "Your financial interests? What about family? What about supporting your brother?" The calls and texts became relentless over the next week. Ryan would swing between anger and emotional manipulation, sometimes in the same message. "You've always had everything handed to you. Mom and Dad would be ashamed of how you're treating me. I'm the only family you have left and you're turning your back on me." Then came the unexpected family alliance against me. Aunt Patricia called one evening. "Cassie, I'm concerned about this situation with Ryan," she said. "He told me about his business opportunity and how you're refusing to help him." "Aunt Pat, it's more complicated than family supports family," she interrupted. Your father would have wanted you to help your brother succeed. Dad set up the trust the way he did for a reason, I reminded her. You always were the favored one, she said with sudden bitterness. Maybe you like keeping Ryan dependent on you. I was stunned. Aunt Patricia had always been rational and fair. If Ryan could turn her against me, who else would follow? The answer came quickly. Cousins started making comments on social media about family loyalty. My uncle left a voicemail saying he was disappointed in my choices. Even my mother's best friend reached out to express concern about the rift I was causing. Ryan's campaign escalated when he showed up at my architecture firm during client hours. Just 5 minutes, he told the receptionist loudly enough for everyone to hear. My sister won't even give me 5 minutes. My boss Nathan was understanding but concerned. Family matters should stay at home. Cassandra, he said after he had hastily met with Ryan in the lobby to make him leave. At home that night, Ryan was waiting outside my building. This time, Stephanie was with him. You're being ridiculous, Stephanie said, her voice cutting. Do you know how many investors are lining up for this opportunity? Ryan is doing you a favor even offering you a piece of this. Then take their money instead, I suggested. Ryan stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. You've got millions sitting there doing nothing while I'm trying to build something that matters. If you don't help me, we're done. Forever. Is that what you want? Looking into my brother's eyes, I didn't recognize the person staring back at me. There was a coldness there, a calculation that frightened me. I need you to leave now, I said firmly. Both of you. As they walked away, Ryan turned. You'll regret this, Cass. I promise you that. I didn't know then just how far he would go to make good on that promise. 3 weeks after refusing Ryan's demand, I was preparing for the biggest presentation of my career. Our architecture firm was pitching a design for a new sustainable community center to the city council, a $40 million project that would cement our reputation for green design. As project lead, I'd been working 16-hour days finalizing every detail. The morning of the presentation, I arrived at the conference center 2 hours early to set up and run through my slides one last time. The projector displayed our title slide beautifully, Mitchell and Associates, Reimagining Community Spaces. I clicked to advance to the next slide. Instead of our architectural renderings, a photoshopped image appeared of me in a compromising position with crude text overlaid. I gasped and immediately hit the next button. Another doctored image. Then another. Pornographic. Humiliating. No, 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 I whispered, frantically closing the presentation, as the conference center's AV technician averted his eyes. With shaking hands, I called our office IT specialist, Marcus. Someone's hacked my presentation, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I need you to check my laptop and send me the backup from the server. On it, Marcus said. Don't do anything with your computer. The next hour was the longest of my professional life. The clients would arrive in 45 minutes. My boss Nathan appeared, face tense with concern. What's happening, Cassandra? I explained in hushed tones, mortified. Nathan's expression shifted from concern to anger. If this is a prank, it's grounds for termination. It's not a prank. I insisted. Someone deliberately sabotaged my presentation. Marcus arrived with a clean laptop and a grim expression. Good news and bad news, he said. I've got a backup of the original presentation from yesterday. But there's more. Once we were alone, he showed me what he'd found. The files were replaced this morning at 3:17 a.m. The attack came from outside our system, but whoever did it knew exactly where to look and how to access just your files. Can you trace it? Already did, Marcus said, showing me an IP address. This mean anything to you? I felt sick as I recognized the address. It was from Ryan's apartment building's network. The backup presentation saved the client meeting, though I was badly shaken and off my game. We didn't get the immediate green light we'd hoped for. The committee wanted to consider all options, often a diplomatic way of saying they were looking elsewhere. Nathan called me into his office afterward. The technical issue today nearly cost us a major client, he said. What happened? I told him everything about Ryan, the trust fund demand, and now this apparent sabotage. I need to be direct, Cassandra. This kind of drama affects everyone here. If it happens again, you'll have to reconsider your position on key projects. I understand, I said, humiliated. That evening, I confronted Ryan at his apartment. Stephanie opened the door with a smirk. Ryan's not here, she said, starting to close the door. I stuck my foot in the doorway. Tell him I know what he did to my presentation, and I have proof. Stephanie's expression flickered. I don't know what you're talking about. The IP address was traced to this building, I said. Is ruining my career worth getting your hands on my money? Ryan appeared behind her. That's a serious accusation, Cass. You might want to be careful about making it without real proof. The cybersecurity team has the evidence. I lied, watching their reactions. Ryan's face remained impassive, but Stephanie shifted nervously. Maybe you should leave, Ryan said coldly. Before you say something you'll regret. If anything like this happens again, it'll go to the police, I warned. Family or not, as I walked away, I heard Stephanie hiss something to Ryan about being more careful. At home, I broke down. The trust I'd always had in my brother, despite his flaws, was shattered. I called my friend Alicia, sobbing through the explanation of what had happened. You need to document everything, she advised. Screenshots, emails, witnesses, anything that shows a pattern of behavior. If he's willing to go this far, who knows what's next? I can't believe he'd try to destroy my career, I said. People do terrible things when money's involved, Alicia replied. Especially family. They know exactly where to hurt you. I spent that night securing all my accounts with new passwords and two-factor authentication, jumping at every notification on my phone. The brother I'd grown up with, fought with, grieved with, he was gone, replaced by someone who saw me only as an obstacle to wealth. What I didn't know then was that Ryan was just getting started. The work sabotage was merely his opening move in a campaign that would test the limits of both my resilience and his ruthlessness. The attack on my professional reputation was just the beginning. 2 weeks later, while having lunch with a client, I received a flurry of text messages from various friends and family members. Are you okay? Just saw the post. Call me as soon as possible. Is this true about you? Excusing myself from the table, I checked social media to find anonymous accounts posting detailed stories about my supposed substance abuse problems and embezzlement from family funds. One post claimed I had stolen from our parents before their death. Another suggested I was in rehab multiple times. Each post featured private family photos, images only someone close to me would have doctored to make me look unstable or intoxicated. The captions were devastating. Trust fund princess can't handle her responsibilities. Embezzlement runs in the family. Should someone this unstable control millions? I frantically reported the accounts, but as soon as one disappeared, 2 more popped up. The stories spread from platform to platform, each version more elaborate than the last. My phone rang. It was my cousin Melanie, who was getting married in 3 weeks. Cassie, I need to talk to you about the wedding, she said, her voice strained. What's wrong? I think. Given everything that's going on with you right now, maybe it would be better if you didn't attend. What are you talking about? I asked, stunned. These stories online, your issues. We want the day to be drama-free. I hope you understand. I'd known Melanie since we were in diapers. We'd been bridesmaids in each other's future weddings since we were 12. Now she was uninviting me based on malicious lies. None of those stories are true, I said. It's Ryan, he's retaliating because I wouldn't give him money. That's not what he said, Melanie replied. He's worried about you, Cassie. We all are. Maybe get some help, and then we can revisit things. The call ended with me standing on the sidewalk, shaking with rage and humiliation. My client meeting was ruined. I couldn't focus on anything. That evening, I drove to Aunt Patricia's house, determined to clear my name. She had always been my strongest advocate in the family. Her husband, my Uncle David, answered the door with a frown. Patricia's not feeling up to visitors, he said, blocking the entrance. Please, Uncle David, I need to talk to her about these ridiculous rumors. We've seen the evidence, Cassandra, he said gravely. Ryan showed us everything, the bank statements, the rehab discharge papers. If you need help, we'll support you, but we can't enable this behavior anymore. Those documents are fake, I protested. Have you ever known me to have a substance problem? Ever seen me out of control? Think about it. Uncle David hesitated, doubt crossing his face. Then, Aunt Patricia appeared behind him. That's enough, Cassandra, she said coldly. I always defended you when your father favored you with the inheritance. Now I see he made a terrible mistake. Aunt Pat, please, Ryan told us how you threatened to destroy his business if he exposed your problems. Is that why your presentation was sabotaged? Did you do it yourself for sympathy? I stood there, mouth open in shock. The narrative had been completely reversed. Now I was not only an addict and a thief but also manipulative enough to sabotage myself to frame Ryan. This is insane, I said finally. None of this is true. Then why are so many people confirming these stories? She demanded. Who? Who specifically is confirming them besides Ryan and Stephanie? Aunt Patricia faltered. Well, your old roommate from college mentioned your issues. I hadn't spoken to my college roommate in years. Did you actually speak to her, or did you see a social media post? A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face, quickly replaced by conviction. You need help, Cassandra. When you're ready to admit that, we'll be here for you. The door closed in my face. Walking back to my car, I noticed a black sedan parked across the street, its engine running. When I looked directly at it, it pulled away quickly. By the following week, I'd lost invitations to 3 family events and a charity board position I'd held for years. Former colleagues stopped returning my calls. Even my doorman gave me strange looks, having apparently seen something online. Alicia helped me document everything, screenshots, names of family members who'd cut contact, dates and times of new anonymous accounts appearing. We started noticing patterns. The posts always originated between 2 to 4 a.m., often used the same unusual phrases, and consistently tagged the same sphere of my connections. This is coordinated character assassination, Alicia said as we reviewed the evidence. And it's sophisticated. This isn't just Ryan being petty, someone knows what they're doing. Stephanie, I said. She's always there when Ryan confronts me, always whispering to him. We need to know more about her, Alicia suggested. Have you ever really looked into her background? That night, as I was walking to my car after dinner with Alicia, I noticed the same black sedan from before, parked half a block away. This time, I took a photo of the license plate before it drove off. The smear campaign was taking its toll. I couldn't sleep, jumping at every notification. I stopped checking social media altogether but couldn't escape the constant text messages from people concerned about me or, worse, condemning me. One morning, I found a note slipped under my apartment door. Back off or everyone will know the truth about March 2019. Nothing significant had happened in March 2019. It was a complete fabrication, but the implication was clear. They would keep manufacturing evidence until my life was completely destroyed. I was being systematically isolated, my reputation dismantled piece by piece. With each passing day, I felt more alone, watching helplessly as Ryan turned people I'd known my entire life against me. The worst part wasn't the lies themselves, it was that people so readily believed them. Years of trust and relationships were proving paper-thin in the face of salacious rumors. My character, the one thing I thought was unassailable, was being redefined by someone else's narrative. But as I would soon discover, social destruction was just one front in Ryan's war against me. He was about to strike at something even more fundamental: my financial security. On a Tuesday morning in March, my phone rang at 6:17 a.m. Still half asleep, I answered to hear the urgent voice of Janet, my personal banker at First National. Miss Mitchell, I'm sorry to call so early, but our fraud detection system flagged unusual activity on your accounts overnight. We need your verification immediately. Fully awake now, I sat up in bed. What kind of activity? Multiple large transfer attempts from your investment account to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The system blocked them due to the amount nearly $250,000, but someone is using authenticated credentials. My stomach dropped. That wasn't me. I didn't authorize any transfers. I suspected as much, Janet said grimly. We've frozen all your accounts as a precaution. You'll need to come in person with identification to reset everything. 2 hours later, I sat in a conference room with Janet and the bank's security officer, Andrew. The attempted theft was more sophisticated than a typical scam. Whoever did this had significant personal information, Andrew explained, showing me the transaction logs. They correctly answered security questions, had your social security number, and even spoofed your IP address to make it appear the request came from your home network. How is that possible? I asked. Unfortunately, very possible with the right skills or connections, Andrew replied. This wasn't opportunistic, this was targeted. Someone invested time planning this attack. I thought immediately of Ryan's former college roommate, James Wilson. He worked in cybersecurity for a financial services company and had helped Ryan with tech issues in the past. I mentioned this to Andrew. We should involve law enforcement, he advised. This crosses into criminal territory. By that afternoon, I had filed police reports, but was told financial crimes investigations move slowly. On Janet's recommendation, I hired Michael Reeves, a private investigator specializing in identity theft. Michael worked quickly, following digital breadcrumbs from the attempted transfers. 3 days later, we met at my apartment. The attack was extremely sophisticated, he confirmed, but not perfect. We traced some of the intrusion tools to accounts associated with a James Wilson, Ryan's friend, I said. Yes, and here's where it gets interesting, Michael continued. Mr. Wilson made several cash deposits totaling $15,000 the day before the hack attempt. Then he booked a last-minute vacation to Cancun, leaving tomorrow. Has running. I realized, it appears so. We should notify the police immediately. With this new evidence, the detective assigned to my case took things more seriously. They brought James in for questioning before he could leave the country. I wasn't present for the interrogation, but the detective called me afterward. Mr. Wilson cracked pretty quickly, she said. He admits he was paid to attempt the hack, but claims he didn't know the full extent of what he was doing. Says your brother told him it was just to move funds between your own accounts as part of a surprise business gift to him. That's absurd, I said. We know. Mr. Wilson has provided text messages and payment information that clearly contradict that story. We have enough to arrest your brother for conspiracy to commit fraud and identity theft. The reality of what was happening hit me full force. My own brother would be arrested, would likely go to jail because of his determination to get my money. Despite everything he'd done, I felt sick at the thought. What happens now? I asked. We'll pick him up for questioning today. Given the evidence, we'll likely proceed with charges unless you choose not to pursue them. That evening, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Ryan unshaven, disheveled, eyes wild with anger. Against my better judgment, I opened the door, keeping the security chain in place. The police came to my apartment today. He spat. Are you happy now? You tried to steal $250,000 from me, Ryan, I said, surprisingly calm. What did you expect? I expected my sister to help me when I needed it, not send me to jail. You did this, not me, I replied. Where's Stephanie? Wasn't this her idea too? A flicker of something, doubt? Fear? Crossed his face. Leave her out of this. The police have Jameis' testimony and evidence, Ryan. This isn't going away. His expression changed, a calculating look replacing the anger. What if I could make it go away? What if James changed his story? Don't threaten me again, I warned. It's not a threat, it's a deal. Drop the charges, give me the money for Neurotech, and this all stops the social media, the family drama, everything. I looked at my brother, really looked at him. The person standing before me was a stranger wearing Ryan's face. No, I said firmly. No more deals, no more chances. You've gone too far. I closed the door as he started shouting. 10 minutes later, I received a text from an unknown number. You've made your choice. Now live with it. The next morning, I learned Ryan had been arrested but immediately made bail. The source of the bail money was unknown. As I stared at my phone, another text arrived from the same unknown number. Family dinner at the grandparents' house this Sunday. Be there, or the real evidence comes out. I showed the message to Michael, who advised against going. It's clearly a trap, he warned. But I was tired of running, tired of reacting to Ryan's moves. It was time to face my family and the lies they'd been told. I didn't know then that I was walking into the most devastating betrayal yet. Sunday afternoon, I pulled into my grandparents' circular driveway with a knot of dread in my stomach. The familiar Tudor-style house had always represented safety and warmth throughout my childhood. Sunday dinners, holiday gatherings, refuge after my parents died. Today, it felt like I was walking into an ambush. More cars than usual lined the driveway. Aunt Patricia's Mercedes, Uncle David's Range Rover, cousins' vehicles, even my mother's sister's car. She rarely came from Philadelphia for family functions. Whatever Ryan had planned, had ensured a full audience. My grandmother opened the door, her expression tight with concern rather than her usual warm smile. "Everyone's in the living room," she said, hugging me stiffly. The conversation in the living room stopped abruptly when I entered. 14 family members sat in a rough semicircle, with Ryan and Stephanie standing by the fireplace like prosecutors ready to present their case. Aunt Patricia gestured to an empty chair in the center, clearly meant for me. "What is this?" I asked, remaining standing. "We're here because we love you, Cassandra," Aunt Patricia said in a rehearsed tone. "This is an intervention." "An intervention," I repeated flatly. "Based on lies Ryan has been spreading. Please sit down," my grandfather William said from his armchair. The family patriarch at 82, his opinion still carried tremendous weight. "We need to talk as a family." I reluctantly took the designated seat, feeling all eyes on me. Ryan stepped forward, his expression a perfect mask of brotherly concern. "Cassie, we're all worried about you. Your behavior has become increasingly erratic since Mom and Dad died. The paranoia, the accusations, the attempt to have me arrested, it's not you." "That's because none of it is true," I said, looking around at my family's faces, some concerned, others judgmental, a few confused. "We've seen the evidence," Uncle David said. "The bank records showing unusual cash withdrawals from your accounts over the past 2 years. The medical records from your rehab stay in Arizona." "What rehab stay? What bank records?" I demanded. "Show me these supposed documents." Ryan nodded to Stephanie, who opened a folder and began passing around papers. When they reached me, my blood ran cold. The documents looked legitimate: bank statements showing large cash withdrawals, admission papers from a rehabilitation facility with my forged signature, even therapy notes discussing my resentment and paranoid tendencies following my parents' deaths. "These are forgeries," I said, my voice shaking. "I've never been to this facility. These aren't my bank statements." "Denial is part of the disease, sweetie," my mother's sister said gently. "Have any of you actually called this rehab center?" I asked. "Spoken to this supposed therapist? Verified any of this independently?" Uncertain glances were exchanged around the room. "Ryan showed us the emails you sent him," my cousin Mark said, "about how you'd destroy him if he told anyone about your problems. They came from your actual email address." Ryan projected a series of emails onto the living room wall. There they were, messages from my email account, promising to ruin Ryan if he exposed my situation, offering to fund his business in exchange for silence. "I never wrote these," I said, standing now. "Ryan, you hacked my email too? How far are you willing to go?" "See how she's deflecting," Stephanie interjected smoothly. "Classic addict behavior: blame everyone else for problems they've caused." "Let's all stay calm," Grandfather William said. "Cassandra, these accusations against your brother are serious. He's provided documentation of your issues, your threats, even your promises to fund his business, promises you've now broken, leading to these criminal accusations." I turned to my grandfather, desperate for him to see through this. Grandpa, you've known me my entire life. Have you ever seen me intoxicated? Out of control? Have I ever broken a promise to you or anyone in this family? A flicker of doubt crossed his face, but Aunt Patricia jumped in before he could respond. The worst addicts are often the most functional on the surface, she said. Your father hid his problems well too. My father? What are you talking about? Ryan seized the opening. That's why Dad's company was really sold after the accident. The board discovered financial irregularities. Money had been skimming for years to cover gambling debts. They kept it quiet out of respect, but that's why they sold so quickly. I stood speechless, the lie so audacious I couldn't immediately counter it. My father had been meticulous, ethical to a fault. That's why I needed the investment for Neurotech, Ryan continued smoothly, to restore our family's reputation in the tech world. You promised to help, Cassie, then you changed your mind and tried to destroy me instead. The room was silent, all eyes now on me. I realized with horror how thoroughly Ryan had crafted his narrative. Every document looked legitimate, every story built on small grains of truth twisted into poisonous lies. My denials only made me appear more unstable against the mountain of fabricated evidence. We want you to get help, Grandmother said, tears in her eyes. We've found a treatment facility in Colorado. 3 months, fully private. Ryan has offered to manage your finances while you recover. And there it was, the endgame. Ryan would gain control of my trust while I was locked away, with the family's blessing. This is a setup, I said quietly. None of you bothered to verify anything independently. You've accepted Ryan's word and forged documents without question. That's enough, Grandfather William said sharply. I've heard and seen enough. Your parents would be heartbroken to see what you've become. Those words cut deeper than anything else. I looked around the room at my family, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, all convinced I was an unstable addict based on an elaborate fraud. If you believe this, I said, my voice breaking, then you never really knew me at all. I walked out of the house to a chorus of protests and pleas to accept help. As I reached my car, my grandfather called my name. For a moment, I thought perhaps he'd seen through the deception. Until you get treatment, he said coldly. You're not welcome at family gatherings. I can't have you upsetting your grandmother in her condition. I drove away with tears streaming down my face, completely shattered. My family, the last connection to my parents, had been turned against me through an elaborate web of lies. I had never felt more alone. What I didn't realize was that this complete isolation was exactly what Ryan needed for his final move against me. With no one left to turn to, he thought I would finally be vulnerable enough to give in to his demands. He had underestimated my resilience, and the one person who wasn't at that family gathering, who had been quietly investigating on his own. The week after the family intervention was the lowest point of my life. I took emergency leave from work, unable to focus on anything but survival. I moved between my bedroom and couch in a fog of betrayal and grief, jumping at every noise outside my apartment, checking and rechecking that my doors and windows were locked. The isolation was complete. My remaining friends, confused by the rumors and my withdrawal, stopped calling after unanswered messages. My firm partners sent formal emails about project transitions. Even Alicia, my steadfast supporter, had traveled overseas for a 3-week work assignment, leaving me truly alone. Paranoia became my constant companion. I noticed the same cars parked on my street multiple times. My emails started showing login attempts from unknown locations. Once, returning from a rare trip to the grocery store, I found my apartment door unlocked, though I was certain I had secured it. Sleep became impossible without medication. When I did sleep, nightmares of my family turning their backs on me, of Ryan standing over me with that cold, calculating smile, jolted me awake in cold sweats. On the 5th day of this half-existence, my building's security called to announce a visitor, William Mitchell, my grandfather. I don't want to see him, I told the guard. Hes quite insistent, Miss Mitchell. Says he'll wait in the lobby all day if necessary. Curiosity overrode my hurt. Grandfather William was not a man who waited for anyone. I agreed to let him up, positioning myself near the door for a quick escape if needed. When I opened the door, I barely recognized him. The commanding family patriarch looked smaller somehow, his normally immaculate appearance slightly disheveled, deep circles under his eyes. "May I come in?" he asked formally. I stood aside, watching him carefully as he entered and surveyed my apartment, the unwashed dishes, takeout containers, and blankets strewn across the furniture, telling the story of my collapse. "You're not sleeping," he observed. "Would you, if your entire family believed you were an addict and a liar?" I responded bitterly. He nodded, accepting the rebuke. "I deserve that." Grandfather took a seat at my dining table, placing his cane carefully beside him. "I've made a terrible mistake, Cassandra. One I hope you can eventually forgive." I remained standing, unwilling to ease this conversation with normal hospitality. "Which mistake? Believing Ryan's lies or participating in his attempt to take control of my trust?" "Both," he admitted. "And more importantly, failing to do what your father would have expected of me to protect both his children, but especially to ensure the provisions of his will were honored." Something in his tone made me finally sit across from him. "What changed your mind?" "After you left, something kept bothering me. You asked if any of us had verified Ryan's claims independently. We hadn't. So I did." He pulled out a small notebook. "I called that rehabilitation center in Arizona. They have no record of any patient matching your details. The doctor whose signature appears on those papers retired 3 years ago." My breath caught. "You actually checked." "I should have done so immediately," he said, genuine regret in his voice. "Then I contacted First National. I've known the president since college. The account numbers on those statements Ryan provided? They don't exist in their format." Tears of relief filled my eyes. Finally, someone had seen through the deception. "There's more," Grandfather continued. "I hired someone, Samuel Jenkins, retired FBI investigator, old friend, to look into this Neurotech business and Stephanie." "What did he find?" "Neurotech has no actual employees beyond Ryan and Stephanie. No patents filed, no prototypes in development. It's essentially a shell company with a website and some impressive-looking documents." I wasn't surprised about the company, but the next revelation stunned me. Stephanie Wilson is actually Jessica Clark. She has convictions in Texas and Florida for investment fraud and identity theft. She specializes in targeting wealthy families with what her former partners called the black sheep con, finding the family member who feels undervalued and using them to access family money. The pieces clicked into place. Ryan's sudden change after meeting Stephanie, the sophisticated nature of the attacks against me, the elaborate forgeries. My brother was both perpetrator and victim. "Ryan doesn't know who she really is, does he?" I asked. "I don't think so," Grandfather replied. "Samuel believes she identified Ryan as a potential mark after researching the Mitchell family assets. The timing of their meeting after his cryptocurrency losses suggests it was carefully planned. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. "Have you told the family?" "Not yet. I wanted to come to you first, to apologize, and to ask for your help." "My help?" Grandfather looked genuinely pained. "I failed you, Cassandra. I allowed myself to be manipulated because it was easier to believe Ryan's story than to confront the possibility that he had become something darker." His voice cracked with emotion. "Your father trusted me to look after both of you if anything happened to him. I've failed that trust spectacularly." Seeing my proud, stoic grandfather near tears broke something in me. I reached across the table and took his hand. "What do we do now?" I asked. "Samuel has been gathering evidence about Jessica's past and the fraudulent nature of Neurotech. We need your permission to access your financial records to document the attempted theft. Together with James Wilson's testimony, we'll have enough to go to the authorities." "And Ryan?" I asked, my heart still torn about my brother's fate. "That," Grandfather said carefully, "will depend partly on you. Whether his actions warrant criminal charges or if there's another way to handle this." For the first time, I saw the full weight of this revelation on my grandfather, the knowledge that his grandson had participated in a scheme that nearly destroyed his granddaughter. No matter what happened next, our family would never be the same. There's something else you should know, he added grimly. Samuel believes Ryan and Jessica are planning to leave the country soon. We intercepted emails about one-way tickets to a non-extradition country. They're getting desperate. Because I wouldn't cave. I realized. You were stronger than they anticipated. Grandfather acknowledged with unexpected pride. Most people would have given in just to stop the psychological warfare. That night, after Grandfather left, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. I was no longer alone in my fight, no longer questioning my own sanity against a tide of manufactured evidence. The next morning brought new purpose. I had spent too long reacting to Ryan's attacks. Now, with Grandfather and Samuel's help, it was time to go on the offensive and reclaim my life, my reputation, and my family. What remained unclear was whether my relationship with Ryan could ever be salvaged from the wreckage of his betrayal, or if some bonds, once broken, cannot be repaired even between siblings who once shared everything, including grief. With Grandfather William and retired FBI investigator Samuel Jenkins now firmly in my corner, our counterattack moved swiftly. Samuel was everything you'd expect from a 30-year Bureau veteran, methodical, thorough, and utterly unimpressed by Ryan's schemes once he'd dissected them. Amateur hour, he commented during our strategy meeting in my newly secured apartment. Sophisticated techniques but sloppy execution. The identity theft attempt used cutting-edge methods but left obvious digital footprints. The first phase of our investigation focused on Neurotech itself. Samuel assembled a small team, including a forensic accountant and tech specialist, to examine every aspect of the supposed startup. Within days, they confirmed our suspicions. Neurotech existed only on paper and in digital marketing materials. The office address listed on their website was a virtual office space they'd never physically occupied. The supposed team members featured on their site were stock photos or images stolen from LinkedIn profiles of actual tech professionals who had no connection to the company. The business plan is essentially a collage of buzzwords and stolen content from actual neural interface companies, Samuel explained, showing me their findings. Anyone with technical knowledge would spot the inconsistencies immediately, but to lay people, it appears revolutionary. More disturbing was what the forensic accountant discovered about their finances. Ryan had opened multiple business accounts for Neurotech, but money flowed through them in suspicious patterns. The $500,000 they claimed to have raised from angel investors, Samuel pointed to a transaction diagram. It's the same $50,000 deposited, withdrawn, and redeposited through different accounts to create the illusion of larger funding. And if I had invested the $1.5 million, I asked. Based on these patterns, most would have immediately moved to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Belize. They've already established the laundering pathways. The investigation into Stephanie proved even more revealing. Jessica Clark had a documented history of similar cons across 3 states. She specialized in what law enforcement called relationship-based fraud, using romantic or close personal relationships to facilitate financial crimes. Shays operated under at least 7 different identities, Samuel said, showing me a series of mugshots and driver's licenses featuring the same woman with different hair colors and styles. Her pattern is consistent: find vulnerable individuals with access to substantial assets, isolate them from support systems, then extract funds through elaborate schemes. The most shocking revelation came when Samuel's team uncovered the true source of Ryan's desperate need for cash. It wasn't just greed or entitlement driving him, it was fear. Your brother has accumulated gambling debts of over $800,000 to some very dangerous people, Samuel explained grimly. Primarily to an offshore sports betting operation with ties to organized crime. They've been pressuring him for payment for months. That's why he needed exactly $1.5 million, I realized. Half for the debts, half for him and Jessica to disappear. Exactly, and based on recent communications we've intercepted, his deadline for payment is approaching rapidly. With each new discovery, my anger toward Ryan became complicated by pity. My brother had become entangled with professional criminals, both Jessica and her gambling connections, who were using him as much as he was trying to use me. Our investigation also uncovered Ryan's former business partner, Elliot Chang, who had been abruptly forced out of their previous venture. Samuel arranged a meeting with him at a quiet restaurant in Cambridge. Ryan pushed me out 6 months ago, right after Stephanie came into the picture. Elliot confirmed over coffee. We had a legitimate software development company, small but profitable. Then suddenly he's talking about pivoting to neural interfaces with no experience in the field. Did you meet Stephanie? I asked. Several times. She was always steering conversations toward funding sources, investor contacts. She asked a lot of questions about your family's wealth. Elliot hesitated. I tried to warn Ryan that her interests seemed targeted. He accused me of jealousy and bought out my share for pennies on the dollar. With each person we interviewed, each document we analyzed, the full scope of the conspiracy emerged. Jessica had systematically isolated Ryan from anyone who might question her influence, then used his gambling debts as leverage to push him toward more desperate measures. In a strange way, she victimized both of you, Samuel observed. While the investigation proceeded, Grandfather worked on a parallel track with the family. Carefully, without revealing our full strategy, he began sowing seeds of doubt about Ryan's claims. He asked pointed questions about the documentation, suggested independent verification, and reminded family members of my lifelong character versus Ryan's history of financial irresponsibility. By the end of 2 weeks, we had assembled a comprehensive evidence package including forensic proof of the fraudulent Neurotech business, documentation of Jessica Clark's criminal history and aliases, evidence of Ryan's gambling debts and the threats he'd received, digital forensics connecting them to the identity theft attempt, testimony from Elliot, and others about the evolution of the scheme, proof that the intervention documents were sophisticated forgeries. The night before we planned to present everything to the family and authorities, I sat alone in my apartment, reviewing the evidence one last time. Among Jessica's files, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. Detailed research on our family going back 2 years before she met Ryan, including social media analysis, financial estimates, and psychological profiles of key family members. This hadn't been an opportunistic con. Jessica had targeted the Mitchells specifically, likely due to our wealth and the recent loss of my parents creating vulnerability. Ryan wasn't the mastermind, he was her entry point, chosen for his financial insecurity and strained relationship with me. The most disturbing document was a detailed contingency plan with the file name extraction, PDF. It outlined steps for leaving the country quickly with liquid assets if the primary plan failed. The final date listed on the document was just 3 days away. I immediately called Samuel, who arrived within the hour to review the files. "This changes our timeline," he said gravely. "We need to move now, before they implement this extraction plan." "What about the family meeting we planned?" I asked. "Well, still do that, but first we need to ensure they can't flee. I'll contact my associates in law enforcement tonight." As Samuel made his calls, I struggled with conflicted emotions. My brother had participated in a scheme to destroy me financially and psychologically. Yet, seeing the evidence that he too had been manipulated left me wondering if there was any possibility of reconciliation after all this was over. What was clear was that Ryan and Jessica's plan had been more calculated and dangerous than we initially understood. They weren't just after my money, they were prepared to leave a wake of destruction in my life before disappearing with whatever they could get. The next morning, Grandfather called with unexpected news. "Ryan just contacted me asking for an emergency family loan of $100,000. Said it was a life or death situation. The deadline from his gambling debts must have moved up." I realized. I told him I needed to think about it and would meet him tomorrow. He sounded desperate, Cassandra. The trap was closing, not just around Ryan and Jessica, but around our family's future. Whatever happened at tomorrow's confrontation would determine whether any relationship between my brother and me could be salvaged from the ashes of his betrayal. The family gathering at Grandfather Williams' estate was smaller than the intervention that had humiliated me weeks earlier. Grandfather had strategically invited only key family members, Aunt Patricia and Uncle David, two cousins who had been particularly vocal against me, and my grandmother. The intimate setting would allow us to control the narrative and prevent the chaos of a larger group. Samuel and I arrived early to set up the evidence presentation in Grandfather's study. My stomach churned with anxiety, knowing that Ryan and Jessica would arrive, believing they were there to collect an emergency loan from Grandfather, not to face exposure. Remember, Samuel advised as we arranged documents on the large oak table, stay calm regardless of what happens. People who are cornered can become unpredictable. At precisely 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. From the study window, I watched Ryan and Jessica, or rather, Jessica Clark, step inside. Ryan looked haggard, with dark circles under his eyes and a nervous energy as he kept checking his phone. Jessica maintained her composed facade, though her eyes darted quickly around the foyer, assessing the situation. Grandfather led them to the study, where I stood waiting beside Samuel. Ryan froze in the doorway, shock and then anger crossing his face. "What is this?" he demanded, looking between Grandfather and me. "You said this was about the loan. It is about money," Grandfather replied calmly, "just not in the way you expected. Please, sit down. Both of you." Jessica placed a restraining hand on Ryan's arm, her practiced smile never wavering. "Mr. Mitchell, if this is some kind of ambush—" "It's not an ambush, Miss Clark," Samuel interjected, emphasizing her real name. "Though I understand why you might characterize it that way, given your history in Florida and Texas." Her composure cracked momentarily before she recovered. "I don't know what you're talking about. My name is Stephanie Wilson. Please." Grandfather gestured to the chairs. "This will be easier if we can speak civilized." The rest of the family arrived within the next 15 minutes, confusion evident on their faces as they noted the unusual assembly. Once everyone was seated in the study, Grandfather stood at the head of the table. "I've asked you here because our family has been misled," he began gravely. "Serious accusations were made against Cassandra that I now know to be false. What's worse, they were part of a deliberate campaign to damage her reputation and gain control of her trust fund." Ryan stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. We should go, Steph." "Sit down, Ryan," Grandfather commanded with such authority that Ryan complied automatically. "Samuel, please proceed." For the next 40 minutes, Samuel methodically presented the evidence we had gathered. The forensic accounting showing Neurotech was a shell company, the documentation of Jessica's criminal history and previous identities, the proof that the rehabilitation records had been forged, the digital trail connecting Ryan and Jessica to the identity theft attempt and social media smear campaign. With each revelation, the atmosphere in the room grew heavier. Aunt Patricia's hand covered her mouth in horror. Uncle David stared at Ryan with growing disgust. My grandmother wept silently. When Samuel showed the gambling debt documentation and the extraction plan for leaving the country, Ryan's face went ashen. "How did you get those?" he whispered. "Your apartment isn't as secure as you think," Samuel replied, "just as Cassandra's wasn't when you planted those listening devices." That particular detail that Ryan had been secretly recording my private conversations in my home elicited gasps from the family. "Ryan," Aunt Patricia said, her voice breaking, "tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't do these things to your own sister." Ryan looked trapped, his eyes darting between Jessica and the door. Jessica maintained her composure, though her knuckles were white where she gripped her purse. "It wasn't supposed to go this far." Ryan finally said, his voice small, "I just needed the money for the debts. Then things got out of control." "Things got out of control," I echoed, speaking for the first time. "You tried to destroy my career. You turned our entire family against me. You made them believe I was mentally unstable and addicted to substances. You invaded my home. You tried to steal my identity. These weren't accidents, Ryan. These were calculated decisions. I had no choice." Ryan exploded. "These people were going to kill me if I didn't pay," Stephanie said. He stopped, looking at Jessica with dawning comprehension. Stephanie said this was the only way. Jessica stood suddenly, maintaining her poise even now. This is all very dramatic, but you have no actual proof of any crimes. Relationship disputes and business disagreements aren't illegal. If you'll excuse me, I have an appointment. As she moved toward the door, Samuel nodded to someone outside. Two police officers entered the room. Jessica Clark, the female officer, announced, "We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and violation of probation in the state of Florida." The mask finally dropped completely as Jessica's face contorted with rage. "You stupid, pathetic family," she spat. "So obsessed with your precious reputation and family harmony that you couldn't see what was happening right in front of you." As the officers led her away, she looked back at Ryan with contempt. "You were the easiest mark I've ever had. A desperate little boy looking for validation. Pathetic." The door closed behind them, leaving a stunned silence in the room. Ryan slumped in his chair, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. "What happens to Ryan?" Grandmother asked quietly. Samuel looked at me. This had been the most difficult decision in our planning, whether to press criminal charges against my brother or handle the situation privately. "That depends on Cassandra," Grandfather said. "As the primary victim of his actions, it's her decision whether to pursue criminal charges." All eyes turned to me. The weight of the moment of truly holding my brother's fate in my hands was overwhelming. "I won't press charges," I said finally, "on 3 conditions." Ryan looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "First, you enter a comprehensive treatment program for your gambling addiction. Second, you make restitution for the damage you've caused to my reputation, my career, and my sense of safety. We'll work out the details with attorneys. Third," I paused, meeting his gaze directly, "you tell the truth to everyone here, right now. No more lies, no more manipulation. I want to know why you were willing to destroy me." For a long moment, Ryan was silent. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he began to speak. "I've been jealous of you my entire life," he admitted. "You were always the responsible one, the successful one. Dad always bragged about you, while I was the family disappointment. When they died and left you the majority of the trust, it felt like final confirmation that I would never measure up." He described his gambling addiction, which had started in college as recreational poker games and escalated to high-stakes sports betting. How had met Jessica at a time when he was at his lowest, and she had systematically isolated him from friends and family while encouraging his most self-destructive tendencies. "She convinced me that you owed me the money, that you were deliberately keeping me dependent by refusing to invest in my business," he continued. "Each time one plan failed, she had another more extreme idea ready. It all made sense when she explained it." "And the family intervention?" Aunt Patricia asked, her voice tight with restrained emotion. That was Jessica's master plan. She spent weeks creating those forgeries. She said if we could get the family to pressure Cassandra into treatment, I could be appointed to manage her finances during her absence. He couldn't meet anyone's eyes. I knew it was wrong, but by then, I was in too deep. The rawness of his confession hung in the air. Part of me wanted to lash out, to make him feel the full depth of pain had caused me. But looking at my broken brother, I realized he was already experiencing the consequences of his actions. The family's trust in him was shattered. His relationship had been revealed as a calculated con. His freedom now depended on my mercy. "The gambling debts are still a problem," Samuel noted. "His creditors won't simply disappear. I'll handle those," Grandfather said firmly. "Not as a gift, but as a structured loan that Ryan will repay over time, with work and demonstrated responsibility." Over the next several hours, the painful process of reconciliation began. Family members approached me one by one, offering tearful apologies for believing the lies about me. Aunt Patricia could barely speak through her shame at how thoroughly she had been manipulated into turning against me. By evening, most had left, emotionally drained by the day's revelations. Ryan was the last to approach me, looking lost and decades older than his years. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said quietly. "I wouldn't, in your position. Forgiveness isn't a single moment, Ryan. It's a process, and it requires work from both sides. I met his gaze steadily. I'm willing to start that process if you are. But it will take time, and trust has to be rebuilt. I'll do whatever it takes, he promised, and for the first time in years, I heard sincerity in his voice rather than manipulation. In the months that followed, our family began the slow, painful process of healing. Ryan entered an intensive treatment program for gambling addiction. With grandfather's guidance, he began making amends first by publicly acknowledging the lies he had spread about me, then by working to repay the financial and emotional debt he owed. I established firm boundaries with family members who had been quick to believe the worst about me, requiring them to demonstrate through actions, not just words, that they were worthy of trust again. Some relationships were permanently altered, while others eventually grew stronger through the difficult reconciliation process. 6 months after the confrontation, I established a scholarship fund in our parents' names, focusing on supporting students studying addiction and recovery. The painful experience with Ryan had shown me how quickly addiction can destroy lives and families, and how vital professional intervention can be. The journey taught me that standing firm in your truth, even when everyone around you doubts it, requires tremendous strength. It showed me that family bonds, while powerful, must be based on mutual respect and honesty to endure. Most importantly, it taught me that rebuilding after betrayal is possible, but only with clear-eyed accountability and genuine remorse. Today, Ryan and I maintain a cautious relationship. The easy closeness of our childhood is gone, replaced by something more measured but perhaps more honest. He continues his recovery one day at a time, and I continue to rebuild my sense of safety and trust in increments. The question I still ponder, and one I'd love to hear your thoughts on, is whether some betrayals can ever be fully healed. Can a relationship truly recover after one person has systematically tried to destroy the other? If you've experienced something similar with family, how did you navigate the aftermath? Drop your experiences in the comments. And please like and subscribe if this story resonated with you. Thank you for listening to my story. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't in fighting back, but in offering a path to redemption when every instinct screams for retribution. Whatever family challenges you're facing, I hope you find both the courage to stand firm and the wisdom to know when to extend compassion.